What's up? Welcome back to my channel, Plant Loving J. Thank you for joining me today. In this video, my plans are to do a reset for some of my plants that are on 2 moss poles. So most of these plants have reached the top of the moss pole. They're on two 24-inch moss poles. I'm gonna go ahead and chop them down. Depending on what plant it is will determine how much I chop them down. I do not want to extend any of my moss poles to be more than 48 inches tall. I do not have 12-foot ceilings. There is nowhere else for them to grow. So I'm just gonna give them a little reset so that they can continue to grow bigger leaves. So if that's something you're interested in, please keep watching.
I was like glacier, pretty like great chasing. I've become complacent. Look to the operations. My God, it feels
First, I'm going to start with my philodendron Dark Lord. Here she is. Look how much higher she is extending over this moss pole. So I'm going to pull her out and I'm going to go ahead and maybe just chop her in half and stick her back in the same pot and let her continue to climb on the moss pole since her leaves look like they are trying to size up. She did go through a bit of a little stress at one point. She did start losing some of her lower leaves because she was a little underwatered, but that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and chop her and extend her, and I do plan to put her back in the same spot. Some of these plants I do want to move around. For example, my philodendron squamiferum, I think this plant is getting a little stressed out from getting too much light. So I think I'm gonna move her to another location. She was flowering a lot, but before I make the move for her, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna double check her roots and just make sure she's not root bound and just a little sad in her pot. But that's where I'm gonna start with the plants on the moss poles, and depending on how much they kick my butt, I'm gonna continue to try and finish this project so I can tidy up some of my plants over here on the moss poles. Here's another plant I'd like to go ahead and chop and extend. This is should be a Hawaiian pothos. Her leaves have not gotten back to the size they were when I first got her, but that's okay. This plant was grown in Florida and it was living outside. I do not expect the leaves to get as big as they were in that wonderful, wonderful environment in Florida. So yeah, so that's where I'm gonna start and I'll be right back. She is currently sitting on the floor and this is how tall she is standing next to me. I really hate to chop her, but I know she does need to be chopped so I can go ahead and give her some more room to grow. So here's her top leaf. It's pretty new, and this plant does very well in LECA. It is currently in LECA. Wait. So like I said, here are some of her leaves. The tripod I'm using right now is playing me real bad. So let me go ahead and take her outside, give her a chop, and continue on with my project. So here she is next to my Monstera esqueleto, who is getting very tall as well. Here is I think it's a Snow Queen pothos that I added cuttings to the bottom of this moss pole, and the bottom is doing pretty well. So what I'm gonna do is leave the bottom, and this is on a 48-inch pole because at one point, this plant was growing very well on a moss pole, and she looks very dehydrated right now, but this is her. And all of her leaves are facing to the light. She was sitting on the floor. Look at this new leaf. That is so beautiful. And it's like the newest leaf is the only one that is perky. All the other leaves look very sad. I'm gonna go ahead and just take the top off of this moss pole, repot it, and leave the bottom. since it's starting to grow. For the longest, the bottom of this moss pole wasn't growing very well at all, but since it is sitting on the floor, I do have one of my vertical grow lights over here on the floor. So I'm just gonna maybe raise her up a little higher so the lower leaves can start maturing a little quicker and get some better light, and see how she likes that. The first plant that I have moved back into the house is my Monstera Esqueleto. She has been outside because she had started having a fit, and I believe she was attacked by something, but I want all of her leaves to start facing the same direction. I think putting her in front of this window would give her the opportunity to kind of perk up a little bit, because while she was outside, I couldn't give her the sunlight she wanted because it is too hot outside right now. So this is her. I'm gonna water her so she can perk back up, and let me get started moving in the next plant from outside that I have repotted today. The next plant that I moved in here was my Hawaiian pothos. And this is what she is looking like. Her lower leaves down here are drooping just a little bit because when she was at the top of the moss pole, she was reaching down for the light. So I have her currently on a plant stand. I have her closer to the window so she can get as much light as possible. I didn't notice before, but she is growing a new leaf, and I wanted to have enough sunlight and be able to thrive. I didn't mean to chop her up while she was pushing out a new leaf, but over the next week or so, I'm hoping that her stems will start facing up. You see right now, they're pointing down, so they'll lift up a little bit. I'm going to put this grow light, you can see me shining it. I'm not gonna show it on camera, but I will be putting this grow light in front of her as well. Not too close, just close enough so she can get as much light as possible and so that her leaves can start facing forward. This is my Hawaiian pothos. Here is my Dark Lord. I did chop her down, and she is on the same moss pole. And this is what she is looking like repotted. Her leaves are going in funky directions right now, but that is because she was once the same height. So what I'm hoping is these leaves, look at this one. Leaves like this, I'm hoping will straighten out a little bit once she starts getting a little acclimated to her new situation. The light is coming from this side. I do plan on putting a grow light in front of her as well. You know, I still have 2 of these vertical grow lights right here that I will be putting in front of my plants to make sure that they're getting enough light. And that is her. This plant took a serious tumble. I lost one of her leaves. The wind knocked her over after I had repotted her. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, the wind starts blowing. All in all, she is okay. I had to repot her after she flipped over, but I think she's doing very well. So here is her here's her original stem. And this is the part of her stem that was extending over the top of the moss pole. So I tried to get them as close together as possible. And she is in leca. I think this is the only plant that got repotted today that was in leca. The other plants are in soil. So the Hawaiian pothos, this was originally in leca. The bottom part of this plant is still in leca, sitting outside. I think I cut it to the base. So the bottom of this plant is still outside in leca. I repotted the top cutting into a chunky aeroid mix, and hopefully it acclimates to this new medium pretty well. I did notice that the plant had a lot of aerial roots in the moss pole, so my plan is to try to keep the moss pole as moist as possible. So this is what the plants are looking like so far. I know they look a little wild and crazy for now, but Once they start getting situated and getting comfortable over here, all of the leaves should be propped up facing the same direction, and hopefully I don't lose any leaves from the plants that were chopped. I do have another plant that I need to bring in from outside and see where she's gonna go. So let me go get her. If I do not come back to you all, I will be back in about a week or two to give you all an update on how these plants are doing once they fluff up a little bit, especially the ones that were chopped. And then I can show you the final look for all of the plants that were repotted today that are mostly in the background of most of my videos on my wall of moss poles. So I will be back. So I finished my project chopping down the moss poles that are behind me. All of them are now on a 24-inch moss pole, except for my philodendron dark lord. I had to leave her on 2 moss poles because she is still pretty tall. I didn't end up chopping her exactly in half, but she was really tall, so I know she'll get to the top of her moss pole really quickly again. So the next time she reaches the top of the moss pole, I do plan on just chopping her all the way back and propagating her, and just, you know, maybe having a few cuttings and creating another plant with all of the cuttings. Let me get out the way so you can kind of see of what I have going on. So here is my Epiperminum pinnatum variegated. I'm pretty sure I'm chopping up that name, but she is back in her spot. I did put her on a plant stand. Behind her is my Monstera esqueleto. She is growing very tall, very big. She will need a chop soon as well, and I do plan on putting all her cuttings, once I do chop her down, back into her pot. Here is my Snow Queen, my Pothos Snow Queen. She's looking pretty good. Some of her leaves are shriveling up, and I believe this is the part of the plant that might not be attached to the moss pole. The leaves that are higher on the moss pole are growing aerial roots in the moss pole. So that is my Snow Queen Pothos. Here's my Hawaiian Pothos. She's doing very, very well. She's looking real good. She's on a plant stand as well. She's only on 1 moss pole. She's attached really, really well to her moss pole, so that's probably why she's doing very good. I'm trying to keep the moss poles moist, since the ones that are attached to the poles are going to be able to thrive and, you know, stay alive with the water that is in the moss on the pole. And eventually over time, you know, the plants will start growing roots into the soil. This plant is in a chunky aeroid mix, and so is the Snow Queen Pothos as well. Next to my Hawaiian Pothos is my Philodendron Dark Lord. She is in Leca. She is such a no-fuss plant. I mean, I chopped her down, I repotted her. Of course, you know, she did flip over outside and I had to repot her twice, but she's looking pretty good. The new leaf that she had shooting out when I first cut her has opened up and is looking pretty good. I mean, this plant is so hardy. It doesn't, you know, it never really hardly gives me any problems. Here's one of her bigger leaves that looks like, you know, it was struggling at some point, but all in all, I think it looks really well. It's really hard to get a good picture of it because the leaves are like, the leaves are spreading out on both sides, because at one point she had a grow light on both sides of her, so she was reaching for both of the grow lights. I did put this mother grow light in front of her to see if I can kind of get her leaves to start facing forward a little bit like this one is. But that is my Philodendron Dark Lord. She is so beautiful. Look under there. Can you see them big old leaves back here? So pretty. And next to her, I didn't do anything to my Monstera Thai. She's still over here in a chunky aeroid mix. I don't know what I'm gonna do with her. Here are some more of her leaves. I don't know what I plan on doing with her because she is a wild grower. She's going pretty wild. Here is her newest leaf. It's still a little soft, so I'm gonna be very gentle touching her. I'm gonna just leave her alone. She is so pretty. Her variegation is crazy. Over here, one of the lightest parts of her older leaf is starting to brown up a little bit. All in all, I think this plant is doing very, very good. Next to my Monstera Thai constellation is my philodendron. Let me see if I can get some better light on her. Is my philodendron, what is this, a Florida green? She is so big and crazy. I don't know what I'm gonna do with her. She is starting to get very tall, very heavy, but this plant is a monster. I'm not even gonna fool with her. She's not having any problems. From time to time, she does droop a little bit, but maybe I'll end up chopping and propping her later. For now, I'm just gonna leave her be. She is so big and I don't even know where to start with her, but I really, really love this plant. When I first got her, her leaves were like so little bitty. I bought this when I was visiting Florida a few years ago. So that is my philodendron Florida green. So here is how the wall is looking now with my plants that are on moss poles. And I think, you know, everything turned out really, really well. Look at this new leaf from my philodendron splendid. No, my philodendron glorious. She grew with like an interesting split at the bottom of her newest leaf. It looks crazy. It's so interesting. I hope I don't lose this leaf, but this plant is bouncing back. It was stressed out before. It had been attacked a little bit, so she started losing some of her older leaves, but I did propagate her and I put her new propagation in my XO that I posted in my last video. So this is her new growth. These are her older leaves that are starting to fall off. And this is, I think this was the first leaf she grew after she kind of started trying to bounce back. But yeah, that's my philodendron. Look at that leaf. My philodendron glorious. Okay, let me show you two other plants that came off this wall that did end up getting chopped back. So here is my Mandula pothos. She is growing so wild and crazy. I'm just letting her live. I'm just glad she's still here with me. She started wrapping around and reaching up to the top of this moss pole. This is like a custom moss pole that I made for her. I did end up chopping a lot off the bottom of this plant, but her leaves are looking really well. I just stuck her in some in a chunky soil mix. She has a new leaf growing here, and you know, it looks like it didn't fuss too much from being chopped. I think this plant looks good overall. I do plan on moving this plant to another area of my home so that her leaves can start straightening up and facing the same direction. And once she reaches the top of this moss pole, I'll go ahead and extend her. At one point, her leaves were so big. I went through a little bad spell with some of the plants over here and they got extremely underwatered. And that's on me. It's no fault at the plant. I'm actually very happy that I still have my plants over here because let me tell you, it was a little disrespectful the way I did them. And this is the pot she's in. I tried to put the cuttings as close to the sides as I could so I can monitor when it starts regrowing some roots. Right now, I'm treating this plant like the other plants that I mentioned. I'm just trying to keep the moss pole a little moist. It looks dry right now, but I'll go ahead and get her watered a little bit before I move her. I'm gonna put her on a plant shelf in another area of my home. So this is my Mandula pothos. And I hope to see some big leaves coming from this plant again very soon. So I'll keep an eye on her since she doesn't have any roots. So the last plant I'm gonna show you is the bottom of my Pothos Snow Queen. She is in LECA. This plant already has a lot of roots. I mean, she has a lot of roots. I can see where the aerial roots from this plant started growing down into the leca. The aerial roots have started growing into the moss pole and is now growing into the pot of this plant. So I hope that it continues to, you know, be happy. Uh-oh, just lost a damn leaf. I'm really happy to see it grow so the leaves can get as big as the leaf here. Snow Queen that's over here on the wall. I hope you can see her leaves. The top part of the plant looks pretty sad, but I hope it bounces back okay. Hopefully this plant will soon start growing and attaching to the moss pole. I'm sure she'll be okay. I plan to have these two plants close together so I can monitor them pretty closely. Mostly the Mandula since she doesn't have any roots, and I'm gonna move her to a different part of the house. The other plants back here on the wall, I know most of them don't have any roots at all. So I know that every time I come over here to water them, I have to be very consistent and make sure I'm keeping the moss poles moist so that they're not dying because they don't have any roots at this time. But you know, I've done it before. Hopefully I'm successful again with growing some plants that have no roots and just sticking them in some soil. Normally I'm very successful with doing that with plants that I put into leca, but I just wanted to, I don't know why, I just wanted to put all the plants back here on this wall into a chunky aeroid mix. The only plant that's still in leca is my Philodendron Dark Lord because, you know, she is thriving and I'm not gonna fix it if it's not broke with her. I didn't want to take her out of leca and throw her in soil. That's just crazy. So yeah, this has nothing to do with the project that I have, but I wanted to show y'all this new leaf on this Anthurium that I picked up at PlantCon. I did lose all of the original leaves, but look how she's growing back for me. She is so beautiful and just stunning. She's doing really good over here in this area. I have her pretty far away from any grow lights or the window because I just want the leaves to continue to be this rich dark green color. I really love it. And yeah, she is over here really impressing me. I'm so happy that she is still with me. I'm really terrible with anthuriums. I don't know why I keep buying them, but you know, here I am. And for once I'm being pretty successful with one of them and I'm so happy. This is just so, look. This is so beautiful. Love her down. So if you're still here, thank you so much for checking out my video today. I hope you all are doing well and I'll see you in the next video.